Welcome back to the Ruby Tuesday. My name's Ruben, and this is my review from my hotel for Netflix's new season 2 Monsters, the Lyle and Eric Menendez story. So I hope you can just excuse no geeky background, maybe a little bit of a echoey sound, because I've just brought my Mac. I've been watching this over the last few days and I'm eager to talk about it. So let's jump in. So this is a follow-up to the immensely popular first season of Monsters, which was focused on the Jeffrey Dahmer story. Once again, Ryan Murphy and Ian Brennan are at the helm, bringing their signature flair for twisted narratives and morally ambiguous characters to the forefront. They were convicted for the murders of their parents, Jose and Katie Menendez. These killings shocked America. I'd never heard of this story though, so it just shows you how small your sphere can be if you're not from that particular continent. There is always a story that you haven't heard of. So I was interested to see what this was like without having to do any sort of background research into this. I always love just going into a drama that is based on fact and see what our creators are bringing for us. And if you think Ryan Murphy would absolutely lean into the tabloid nature of this, he does. But here's the thing, while Monsters is known for its over-the-top, almost macabre presentation, the Lyle and Eric Menendez story takes a slightly more restrained approach compared to Dahmer. Don't get me wrong, there's still some moments that are distinctly Murphy-esque, and I'll talk about that later. But the show this time around is focused on family dynamics, abuse allegations, and the mental unraveling of the two brothers. And talking about the brothers, Lyle and Eric absolutely killed it. Well, their actors did. Nicolas Alexander Chavez as Lyle brings a complexity to the role, balancing between the sense of entitlement and vulnerability. This is really hard to pull it off, but he does it in style. Lyle often feels like a character who is trying to assert dominance, but deep down, he's broken, and the actor here really nails those internal conflicts. Cooper Kosh as Eric Menendez might be the standout here though. There's something almost eerie about how he portrays Eric's spiral into guilt and mental distress. He plays the role with a haunting sensitivity. His scenes in the courtroom, especially when the allegations of abuse come to the surface, are some of the most gripping in the series. Powerhouse acting and riveting to watch. Ari Grainer plays Leslie Abramson, the brother's defense attorney. She brings a powerhouse performance as expected. She's fierce, calculating, manipulative, but you can't help but feel her passion for the case. It's a nuanced role, and Ari really delivers a razor's edge between moral driven and ethically questionable. There are often times I'm amazed at what she got away with, and then later upset about how she was overlooked, or how a court can look at a situation and just say, no, you're not going to get your chance. We're just going to overlook you. So this is a nuanced role and quite fun to play, I imagine. When it comes to directing and tone, Ryan Murphy is not shy about making things larger than life. But what's fascinating about Monsters, the Lyle and Eric Menendez story, is that it's not nearly as outlandish or stylized as Dahmer. In fact, the tone of this season feels more subdued, more grounded in realism. It's almost like they took notes from the criticism that some had of Dahmer being too exploitative and then tried to focus on the human drama instead. And I like that, but I did miss some of the more shocking moments because this is 9 episodes and it's quite long. That said, we still get those Murphy moments. You know, those sequences where everything feels heightened and slightly dreamlike. The courtroom scenes, for instance, are dripping with tension, and Murphy plays with light and shadow in a way that makes them feel like something out of a stage play. The way the brothers' inner turmoil is externalized through flashbacks, often disorientating and fragmented, This feels both deeply personal and surreal in how it is filmed, how we are framed as a viewer watching each scene unfold. Murphy's direction in collaboration with the cinematography is where the series really shines. The camera work often feels very voyeuristic, which I think is a very clever way of putting you in the shoes of what's going on. Like we're peering into these intimate family moments we really shouldn't be seeing. There's an intentional discomfort there that aligns perfectly with the show's themes. The show's visual style is another win. It's darker with lots of muted tones and shadows, which of course fits the subject matter. The Menendez's house itself is shot in a way that feels both luxurious and claustrophobic. You get the sense that the sprawling mansion is a gilded cage full of dark secrets and tension. a character in of itself. The way certain key moments are framed, like the crime scene or the brothers' breakdowns, gives the show a dramatic, almost operatic feel. It's clear the directors wanted to balance true crime realism with emotional weight, and that balance mostly pays off. Thematically, if you're going to compare season 1 to season 2, Monsters focused heavily on the psychological horror in Jeffrey Dahmer. It was a gritty, stomach-churning experience that wanted to shock you while deep diving into the mind of a serial killer. The Lyle and Eric Menendez story, on the other hand, shifts the focus to family dysfunction and trauma. It's less about the brutality of the crime itself, although that is still in here. It's more about the psychological toll of abuse, entitlement, and the pressures of family loyalty. The first season was about how Dahmer's victims were ignored, overlooked, and ultimately failed by the justice system. Here, it's about how money, power, and influence corrupt a family from the inside out. The show hammers down the idea that the Menendez brothers weren't simply driven by greed, they were products of a deeply toxic environment. The abuse allegations, both emotional and sexual, are central to this season, and they are handled with more sensitivity than I expected. Often, this is the sort of place where a series will try and shock the viewer. That is not the case here. Murphy and the team walk a fine line between portraying the brothers as victims and monsters, and that ambiguity is often what makes the story compelling enough for me to want to stick around because of its longevity, how long the series is. In contrast to season 1, this one feels less flashy but more introspective. Where Dahmer was an exercise in sustained dread, the Lyle and Eric Menendez story is more about the complexity of guilt, morality, and how far people are willing to go to protect themselves from their own actions. So does the Monsters and Lyle Eric story live up to the legacy of its predecessor? I'd say somewhat, yes, with a few caveats. It's certainly less shocking than Dahmer, but it's also more emotionally complex. The acting is top-notch, and the directing keeps things taut and suspenseful, even when the pacing drops in some of the later episodes. If you're a fan of true crime, but want something that leans more into character studies and emotional fallout, this season will definitely scratch that itch. It's not as sensationalized as you might expect, which for some will be a disappointment, but for others, it's a welcome shift in tone. So if you have 9 hours to kill and love deep studies into characters and what makes them go boom, then this is probably your cup of tea. However, I can't say that I'd ever watch this again. The sum of the parts is excellent in every form, acting, directing, tone, and themes. But I couldn't help but feel throughout the story that it was fleshed out too much. For me, it was far too long and a more concise story concentrating mainly on the two brothers rather than side stories that really didn't pay the overall effect of the tone. The shift in tone for season 2 would have added greatly to the atmosphere already created, which is dread and an underlining theme of you just feeling uneasy. If it was more concise, I can't help but feel that tenseness would have been held up, kind of pressurizing the story to bring us to a conclusion that we already know, but might still be more exciting rather than just a deep dive look into what makes characters like these and what the psychological effects of that is. I found it riveting and long, mesmerizing and long, wonderfully acted and long. So I'm going to give Monsters Season 2 3.75 Nicolas Cages out of 5.
You got one.
Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe and drop your thoughts in the comments below. What did you think of Monsters, the Lyle and Eric Menendez story? And remember, live long and Tuesday.